To the outside world, it's hard to know what a programmer is doing and when they'll be done. Managing expectations around time is going to be one of the major things you're going to face during your career as a developer. The unit of time you use in your estimations is going to have an indicator on the certainty of your estimate. Let's consider the same time spans, but conveyed in different units. Now, let's consider what would happen if there was a 2-week variance or change in the schedule. What timeline seems to have the most impact? They all have the same relative change in time, but the one towards the bottom with about 3.5 months or a little over a quarter just feels like less of an impact. Here's 3 simple tips for using time. First, use the largest whole number unit you can. Then, recognize that that time unit is going to be the basis for negotiations. Everyone's going to want to see a little bit of improvement in time and adjust accordingly. And finally, the final tip is to adopt your own personal timescale. We'll go into that a little bit more in the next section. Your personal timescale relates to the minimum unit of time you want to work in. An example might be 1 day, 1 week, or a project. Let's see how we can apply this personal timescale. For example, if we consider 1 day, we might say things like, I can have that for you by the end of the day, or I can have that for you by tomorrow. Similarly, on a week timescale, you might say, we can have that midweek, or I can have that for you by next week. When something takes more than a week, we should probably consider it to be a project, and we can use things like, that's a little more complicated than I was expecting. Let's break that down. Or we might say, that's complex. Is there any part that you would like to see first? Our closing thoughts on units of time is first to recognize that project managers have figured this out a long time ago. If you aren't partnering with a project manager, you should. Your projects will be better and they'll run smoother. And as a methodology, Agile Scrum has some of these aspects that we've been talking about built right into it. You work in Agile Scrum in units called a sprint, which is an iteration, and you measure items that you can do within the sprint using sprint points, which typically reflect complexity. And there's just some rules. Stories can't be more than a certain amount of complexity, and everything that you take on needs to fit within an iteration or a sprint. So now that we know that units of time can help us manage expectations, think about your own projects and your own work. Are you conveying things with the right level of certainty?